Well, this is Sanctity of Life Sunday, and we have dedicated the entire morning to the observance of Sanctity of Life Sunday, and we have two guests this morning. First, I'm going to invite Peggy to come on up. In your programs, it says Cecilia's name, but Peggy is from the same organization, and in your program this morning, you have an insert. We gave it to you last week as well that tells you a little bit about Real Options and Bethany Christian Services. Their office is just nearby. It is just past the Carl's Jr. up the road here on Almaden Expressway. And so I'm sure they would be glad for you to stop in and see their place. But Peggy's going to come and tell you about their ministry. And Peggy, welcome. We're very glad to have you here with us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't mind being Cecilia either. When I came in earlier, there was her picture up there, and I thought, that's good. That's fine. So it's her fault no matter what happens here today, right? So I am so happy to be here. I actually am not Cecilia. She does community outreach. I'm the director of the Mountain View Center. We have 3 centers, one right down the road on Almaden and one on White Road, and then one up in Mountain View, and that's the center I'm with. I've been with the organization for 25 years, so I'm their old senior person here, but I've seen it start. I started with it being Crisis Pregnancy Center and then Community Pregnancy Center, and now we're called Real Options. And I just wanted to say before I started too that this is not a cause or an issue or something to stand for. It's just life. It's you and it's me. And Real Options is a place where the love of Jesus Christ meets human need. And so that just brings it out of the political level to a real level, brokenness helping brokenness. And that's what Jesus calls us to. And a lot of people are offended sometimes about the issue because they've known nothing but condemnation and finger pointing. And there's no room for that in God's kingdom. And so we meet the need with love. We meet each other with love. And that's why I've stayed this long, because it's that kind of a place. We eventually changed our name to Real Options, and I love that name. In the beginning, crisis pregnancy, everybody in the world felt it was a crisis when there was an unexpected pregnancy, and that kind of changed in the world. And then we thought, well, people were saying it's not a crisis, but can I still be helped? That was their perception. So we changed it Community Pregnancy Center. And then it wasn't enough because people thought they'd come just when they needed help, when they decided to parent. And so we changed it to Real Options because the culture in the world here says you have one option. Let's just take care of it. No one will know. And in fact, there's 3. And in fact, God is a God of choice. And he says, walk this right way or walk this way, and there's consequences with each. And he offers life. And so we have an opportunity to explain and to counsel on all 3 options. We are a woman-based center. We are not there to tell them what to do, which is hard for some of us who have a real idea of what they should do. And I'm sure that's true of you when you meet this in the world or in your own story. But what we're there, we have kind of a motto amongst us that is, you have time, be informed. So let me read our mission statement in light of that, and that is, Real Options commits to equip and empower women and men to choose life for their unborn children through the love of Jesus Christ in accordance with God's word regarding the sanctity of human life. So we are there to empower and equip. And how we do that is not make decisions for them or tell them what to do, is we give them information. We equip them with true, good, solid, factual information and resources so that they can make a decision 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road that they won't regret. That is our intent. Yes, we'd love to save the life of a baby. We're really there to save the life of a woman. That's what God came for, to save us from difficult choices so that we can walk in his goodness for eternity. And so, long story short, that's why I'm there. We do 3 basic areas. We do prevention, intervention, and redemption. I love that because it's easy for me to remember without notes. Prevention, in terms of, we have youth education. We have a team of people, or a small team at the moment, we're looking for more, who will go into the high schools when invited, junior highs, youth groups. In the schools, we can't do God talk. In the youth groups, clearly we can. And they go in and talk about life choices. healthy life choices. That's another word for abstinence, which is a dirty word these days. Waiting to be sexually active within the confines of marriage as God lined up. But we talk about healthy choices, STDs, life goals, self-worth, self-value, all the principles that are in Scripture, yet we can't do that in the schools. And then we get our name out into the schools, so if and when the kids do get into trouble, they can know where to come, that will give them options. That's our prevention area. Intervention, we do counseling, like I said, they come in, and it's where the love of Jesus meets human need. And so we listen, and we find out what their story is, and then we have the opportunity to give options. If they already know what they're going to do, if they already know they're going to carry to term, then we can give them the 2 life choices, which is parenting, options. Parenting, adoption, and abortion, those are your options. And so we give information for that. So we intervene on their behalf. We give them good information, equip them so that they can better make a choice. It is our hope that if we save and love this woman without judgment, that her unborn will live. Intervention, we offer free pregnancy tests, free ultrasound. A woman who is undecided, according to our statistics, truly undecided, sees an ultrasound after counseling, 95% choose life. That's how incredible a picture is, a beating heart is. I just had someone 2 weeks ago who came in and just denial. It's just not going to be alive. It's just not going to be true. Got the information, knew which way she was going, had an abortion plan the next day, gave me the nod, sure, I'll hear what you have to say. She saw the beating heart, broke down in tears. She could not deny anymore. Came back to the room. One of the questions we ask is, what's your next best step? And I'm going to have to cancel my abortion. Intervention with the ultrasound picture. And then prenatal care up to 6 months for women who for the people, really just why 6 months? We're just standing in the gap while they're trying to get their insurance together. A lot of people will not be seen or taken care of because they're trying to figure out that system. And so we help them with that and give them prenatal care once a month to make sure they're okay. Free prenatal vitamins, which are gold these days. And then also we offer baby car seats, pack and play, portable cribs, baby clothes up to size 2, maternity clothes, all sorts of practical help to help stand by her and say, you're not alone. And the counseling as long as she wants it, with discipline of children, relationships, husbands, court. And then we have a new exciting thing, which is Bethany Christian Services. This is really exciting because Bethany is the biggest adoption agency in the States right now. And we are in a pilot program. They happen to have rented some of our new space in our new place in Mountain View. I'm in this very gorgeous new building. I'm very blessed to have it. And they have rented an office there too, so that if and when that woman right there wants to ask some questions of an adoption consultant, we can pull Shonda in and she can offer them just answer some of their questions. And then later, should they want to entertain the placement of their baby, then they have already made a heart connection with a real face, a person, not an agency. And it's really exciting, and we're just going to wait for a year and see what happens with that. That's what's new with Real Options. But I think the biggest thing I want to say, and I'll tell you just a little bit about our hope, is literally our hope, is our redemption services. And this is what I want you to hear because not very many people hear it. And that is, yes, we give information about abortion. We tell them about the risks, the consequences, all the facts. Oftentimes they go to an abortion clinic and they aren't given all the facts. And so we give them. But our redemption services is really our recovery program. There are retreat weekends are full. The organization, the department of our ministry is called HOPE, which stands for Healing of Post-Abortion Emotions. And it is a group where people can come, a support group, who've chosen abortion, who really want to embrace the fullness of healing. So many people, particularly church people, they know God forgives them. That's a good, loud message that the church gives. They cannot forgive themselves. That's the hard place. And to go through a group and work through the character of God and the steps, the healing steps, the grief and loss steps, together with others that have made that choice. What makes this safe and why would somebody go? Everyone who facilitates and leads those groups has had an abortion and gone through healing and knows the fullness and forgiveness of Jesus Christ. So there's great safety, great credibility. It's beautiful. Everything is spoken with love because that's who God is. That's why the cross. That's why we praise how great thou art. So prevention, intervention, redemption. It is my desire that you would go around and love others today and see them as people. Everyone's hurting in this world. Everyone needs Jesus. Like the video before, we need the eyes to be able to give like Jesus. I just thank you so much, this church, Pastor Craig, for supporting us. And I want you to know we have a volunteer orientation March 8th. So you can look on our realoptions.net website. If you're interested in volunteering, either in the office, doing paperwork at events, fundraisers, that kind of stuff, or in the school speaking, or in our Hope group leading, please consider signing up for that registration. I will be leading that, so at least you'll know it's a friendly face for that orientation. And then on the tables out front is this card. It tells about the summits, the Rachel's Vineyard Real Options retreat weekends. They're free. It's a whole weekend at a retreat center, free for those who want healing. Because that's what God offers us, is free healing. So I just thank you so much. If there's something I've forgotten, please read it all. And Pastor Greg, thank you so much. I really appreciate your help and involvement.
Well, we've invited Alan Schliemann from a ministry called Stand to Reason to come and speak to us this morning. I'm a big fan of Stand to Reason, have been for many years. They have just a terrific website, a great newsletter that they put out every month, and Alan will talk to you more about that. That's one of your inserts here if you want to sign up for their newsletter. But we asked Alan to come on Sanctity of Life Sunday. Alan speaks all across the country and many other countries as well on the topics of apologetics, explaining why we believe what we believe as followers of Jesus, why we believe in God. How do we deal with the question of evil? Why do we trust the Bible? He came and spoke to us about a year and a half ago, right after my last hip replacement surgery. I just miss those things, you know. It's been a while. I think I need to schedule another one. But and he talked to us about the difference between what Muslims believe and what we as Christians believe. And so I didn't get to hear him in person, so this is my first time hearing him live, and I'm really excited about that. But we've asked him to come and address a hard topic. This is Sanctity of Life Sunday, and people come down on different sides of the issue. There's no doubt on which side Alan will be. If you look at his topic, if you look at his outline, which is in your program this morning, it's called Making Abortion Unthinkable. So we know what Alan's going to be talking to us about. But he's here to help us to understand, to explain why we believe what we believe about this issue, and how do we better communicate? How can we more effectively communicate to those around us the position that we take as followers of Jesus? So Alan, why don't you come on up? Alan just got his master's degree from Biola University, the rival of Azusa Pacific University. And Alan confessed to me that he's not a 49ers fan, but he's a big basketball fan, a Los Angeles Lakers fan. And for those of us who are Warriors fans, ha ha ha. Anyway, Alan, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Yeah, it's a tough time being a Lakers fan. Man, it is just not pretty these days with those guys. Well, I understand the 49ers game isn't until about, 3:30, is that correct? Yeah, I got plenty of time. Yeah, no, I was just thinking because if it was earlier and it was actually during the church service and actually people had to miss the service to watch the game, I mean, just imagine the guilt trips I could lay with speaking about the topic of abortion and little children getting killed and you're skipping it to watch a football game. I mean, that would be... Yeah, oh, you already got that last week? Okay, good. Well, then there's no need to cover it today. All right. Well, I have been traveling to a number of different churches around the country, and it's interesting. One of the most common phrases I hear is the term social justice. Perhaps you've heard of the term. It's used a lot in Christian circles. And usually when that topic is mentioned, people think about hunger or poverty or homelessness or human trafficking, which, by the way, of course, all of these are serious issues that Christians are genuinely concerned about. But curiously absent from the social justice issue list is the topic of abortion. And I get it. Abortion's an ugly topic. It gets a lot of people upset. Even people within the church get upset by it. So I get that. I understand. Most Americans just want the topic of abortion to go away. They don't want to deal with it. But abortion is not going away, at least not yet. And here's the key, though. If what we believe about abortion is true, that abortion kills an innocent human being, then abortion rises to the most significant social justice issue of our day. Why? Well, because abortion is legal throughout all 50 states, throughout all 9 months of pregnancy, and for virtually any reason. And the fact is, 48% of pregnancies are unplanned, and half of those end in abortion. And if you ask Planned Parenthood, who is the #1 provider of abortion in America, according to their own statistics, 3,321 unborn children are killed in the United States every single day. That's more than died on September 11th, and that happens every single day. You see, abortion really is actually very different than any other social justice issues that I listed. Because the last time I checked, it's not legal to starve people to death. It's not legal to force people into poverty. It's not legal to steal people's homes and make them homeless. It's not legal to traffic human beings for profit. Yet it is legal to kill an innocent human being if they're not born yet. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't care about poverty or homelessness or human trafficking, all these things. Of course we should. And many Christians and indeed non-Christians care about these issues. But out of all of those social justice issues, abortion is the only one that not only is legal, but it results in the death of an innocent human being. It happens 3,321 times a day, according to Planned Parenthood, which perhaps is maybe a modest estimate. And it's a protected right by our government, and it's funded by our own tax dollars. That's why it should be the #1 topic on the social justice issue list. But it's not a trendy topic anymore. In fact, many people consider it kind of old hat. In fact, you mention abortion into an audience, and you can just see eyes glaze over, like, oh, really? Are we going to talk about abortion? It's a yawner for a lot of people. Now, that alone is upsetting to me. But here's what gets me even more. 27% of people who have abortions identify themselves as Catholic. 33% profess to be Protestant. Do you know what that means? Christians are killing their own children. So despite all the talk of Christians being pro-life, it's merely kind of pro-life in our attitude, but not in our behavior. We're doing nothing to stop the killing. Indeed, many believers are having abortions. It's not just sort of the secular college-age girls out there that are guilty. It's people sitting in our pews as well. They're not even buying into sort of the relativism of this idea. They're not saying, well, I'm personally against abortion, but I would never advance anti-abortion laws in our country. No, they're personally having abortions. And so the most dangerous place for a baby to be today in America is resting in her own mother's womb. And so I want to talk to you this morning about how we can make that place safer for unborn children by making abortion unthinkable. And here's the exciting part about it. There isn't many vocations, there aren't many ministries where we as a community of believers can be involved in the act of saving lives. I mean, perhaps you're in law enforcement, maybe, or maybe you're in the military, or maybe in the medical field, and yes, you're involved in saving lives. But for most of us, the rest of us, that's not something that we would regularly engage in. Yet when we engage in pro-life work, we are in the process of actually saving individual human lives. And there's no risk to your own life in the process, unlike in the military and law enforcement. And there's lots of things that we can do practically today, this week, that can help in that process. Depending on your resources or your skill set, there are so many things you can do. As Peggy mentioned, you could volunteer for a pregnancy resource center like Real Options, and I encourage you to do that. You can take your time and invest it in an organization like that gives real practical tools and help to women who desperately need it. You could donate your money to pro-life individuals or to pro-life organizations like Real Options or other organizations who are trying to care for women or who are trying to stop abortion. There's other ways you could support women who are directly impacted by perhaps being an abortion-minded person. And perhaps we could provide them with resources, funds, money, lodging, supplies, anything that can help them to make the right decision regarding that. You could also vote for pro-life candidates or vote for pro-life policies. There's all sorts of things that you can do practically even this week. But this morning I want to teach you some practical tools in the art of pro-life persuasion. How do you persuade people who perhaps are abortion-minded or who are attitudinally in favor of abortion to change their minds about a decision like that? Now you're thinking, well, why would we do that? Why change minds? Well, because changing minds can change a woman's mind about abortion who may be abortion-minded, and that would save a life. But changing minds does something as well. It changes the way people think about this issue, and of course that means it changes public opinion. And when you change public opinion, eventually that changes public policy. And when you change public policy, that also will save even more lives. So it's very practical to have the tools of pro-life persuasion in order to change people's minds. Now you're probably thinking, but Alan, this is abortion, right? Hello? People don't change their minds on abortion. People think this is a very emotional issue. They're entrenched on one side or the other. You're not going to change minds. All you're going to do is upset people and strain relationships. I completely disagree. I see people change their minds all the time. In fact, I take students and adults and we train them and we go out in the streets. And believe me, people change their minds, sometimes even on the spot. You just need to know the right tactics. And so I want to answer 3 questions for you this morning that'll help you and me to make abortion unthinkable in our spheres of influence. And the first question that I want to answer is the question, what is the unborn? Now you see, people think the topic of abortion is complex. And perhaps many of you agree. You might think, well, yeah, in order for me to understand something about abortion and to be able to talk to other people about it, I have to know all sorts of things like the abortion rate, or I need to know about adoption rates, or financial issues, or I need to be able to talk about rape and incest and all these different topics. And I can't possibly know all there is to know about all these issues. How can I possibly be effective? Well, the good news is there's actually only one question to resolve in the entire abortion discussion. And that question is, what is the unborn? Let me give you an illustration as to how I know this is the only and key question to ask and answer in this discussion. Imagine for a moment you're at the kitchen sink one evening, you're doing the dishes, and imagine you have an 8-year-old son, which I do, so I know this actually happens, and you're doing the dishes, and your 8-year-old son comes up behind you, and while your back is turned to him, he says to you, "Mommy or Daddy, can I kill this?" Now, before you can answer his question, what question are you going to ask him? Yeah, what is it? And so you turn around, and he's holding a daddy long-legged spider in his hand. What's your answer going to be? Sure. You take one leg, I'll take another leg, let's just pull, right? Just break that sucker in 2, right? Well, what if he's holding the neighbor's cat? What's your answer going to be? I guess there's no dog lovers in the room, right? Every once in a while you say, yeah, go ahead and kill it. It's like, well, what if he's holding his little sister by the neck? What's your answer going to be? Son, you need therapy, okay, right? He's got issues. And notice what this illustration does. This illustration teaches us that whether or not it's moral to kill something depends entirely upon what it is we're killing. Before you can answer the question, can I kill the unborn, you have to answer a previous question, which is, what is it? In fact, many years ago, I was invited to Central Michigan University by a pro-life student club. And they wanted me to do what's called an abortion audience debate. And this is where I stand up in front of the university audience, and they give me about 20 or 30 minutes to present the pro-life view. And then anyone in the audience can stand up to the microphone and basically debate me. And then after they're done with that, they sit down, and the next person gets up the microphone and debate. So this will go on for about an hour or so. And the way I began my intro, sort of 30-minute presentation, is I got up and I said, I have a concession to make. I said, I actually agree with abortion choice advocates. I actually think abortion should be legal. I said, I actually think partial birth abortion should be legal as well. I think women should have the right to choose. I think abortion should be safe and legal. I think the government shouldn't have anything to say about what a woman does with her own body. But yet I do think the government should be allowed to take money from people to pay for abortion. Now, at this point in the conversation or in the presentation, the pro-life club that invited me was like going, what is going on? Who did we invite? I said, I agree with abortion choice advocates on all those issues if what? If the unborn is not a human being. That's the key issue. And so let me put it this way to you, and this is something that you should commit to memory. If it turns out the unborn is not a human being, then no justification for abortion is necessary. However, if the unborn is a human being, then no justification for abortion is adequate. Right? Think about that. The key question is, what is the unborn? And if it turns out that the unborn is not a human being, then go ahead, have the abortion. What's the big deal? You don't have to give any reasons why you should be allowed to have an abortion. Go ahead, have the abortion. Do whatever you want with that unborn thing. But if you ask the question, what is the unborn, and it turns out to be a human being just like you and me, well then, there's no justification to kill an innocent human being like you and me. Because we don't kill innocent human beings for the vast majority of reasons that people have abortions. In fact, again, looking at Planned Parenthood's own statistics and research, here are the 5 reasons women give Planned Parenthood, the number 1 abortion provider in America, why they are having abortion. Number 1 reason, the timing is wrong to have a baby now. Number 2 reason, I can't afford to have a baby now. Number 3 reason, I'm done having children. Number 4, I'm having relationship problems. And the number 5 reason is having a baby would interfere with education or career plans. Notice, none of those 5 reasons ever justifies killing a born human being. And if the unborn is just like a born human being, then I submit to you that we can't kill the unborn for any of those 5 reasons either. Now, I haven't made the case yet that the unborn is just like you and me. I'm about to. But notice, that's why this is the key question. What is the unborn? Is the unborn just like you and me? And if so, then none of those 5 reasons, or others perhaps, would be justification to kill the unborn. So abortion then really is not complex, morally speaking, at all. All you have to do is answer the question, what is the unborn? And I believe that the science of embryology speaks decisively on this question. In fact, what I want to show you is that the science of embryology proves 3 things. And when I use the word proves, actually I don't use the term prove very often ever when I'm talking about apologetics, because to prove something takes a tremendous amount of evidence and certainty and confidence. However, in this case, the science of embryology is decisive on this question. And I believe the science of embryology proves 3 things. 1, that the unborn is a living being, meaning it's alive. Number 2, that the unborn is a distinct individual. It's not merely a part of the mother's body. And number 3, that the unborn is a human type of being, not some other kind of being, some other animal, or some potential human. So let's take each one of those in turn. So the first one is the unborn a living being? And I think this is perhaps the easiest to see, that the unborn is alive. In fact, biologists, when they're looking at things under a microscope or other kinds of things out in biology, when they want to know, is this thing a living thing, they ask, does it meet the biological criteria for a living thing? And here's what the criteria are. Number 1, it grows. Number 2, it responds to stimuli. And number 3, it metabolizes nutrients and converts it into energy. If it does those 3 things, then biologists would say, yes, this is a living thing. And it turns out the unborn does all 3 things. So therefore, we can conclude that the unborn is a living thing. Okay, I'm sure most people would agree to that. But is this thing that's alive merely an extension of the mother's body, like her appendix or her tonsils or her teeth? Or is it a unique individual? Well, again, I believe that the science of embryology speaks decisively upon this as well. In fact, there's a number of things that we can look at and see that the unborn differs from the mother in significant ways that clearly says this is a unique individual. For example, the unborn has its own unique fingerprints. And when it comes to forensic evidence, if you have your fingerprints on a gun versus somebody else, that's how we distinguish one person from another. And the unborn, from even in the earliest times in its womb, has its own unique fingerprints. Furthermore, it has its own unique DNA or genetic fingerprint, meaning every cell in the unborn's body is genetically distinct from every cell in the mother's body. And again, this is another way that, forensically speaking, we are able to distinguish between one person and another. And the unborn has its own unique genetic fingerprint. The unborn also has its own circulatory system, its own blood type, its own heart. And here's something really interesting. If you've ever studied embryology and you look at a pregnant mother and her unborn, you'll notice that if you look at diagrams, that the blood of the mother and the blood of the unborn come very, very close together, but they don't mix. They come close together so that the unborn can receive nutrients from the mother's blood, and so that the unborn can kind of give off waste material to the mother's blood, and the mother can get rid of that waste. But there's never a mixing of the blood. Here's what's interesting. If there's ever a problem in the pregnancy where the mother's blood and the unborn's blood mix, here's what the mother's body does. It mounts an immune response attacking the unborn. Why? Because it perceives the unborn to be a foreign body, a different person. And this is clear evidence then that that the mother's body recognizes the unborn as a unique individual, not her own body. If it's her own body, her immune system does not attack it, but because it recognizes this is someone different. And this gives us further evidence to think that the unborn is a unique individual, not merely part of the mother's body. The unborn also has its own brain, its own central nervous system, its own brainwave pattern. Furthermore, the unborn could be a boy, and the mother doesn't have, male genitalia. So clearly, this is another indication that the unborn is a unique individual. But here's another thing: the unborn can be conceived outside of the mother's body, inside a petri dish, and then later implanted inside the mother, which is another indication that we are not talking about the mother's body, but rather a unique individual. Or here's another thing to think about. Conceptually, you could probably imagine that through surrogacy, you could have a Chinese mother carrying a Swedish unborn child, right? And that's, again, further way to recognize, oh yeah, we're talking about completely two different individuals. And so therefore, again, we've looked at the science of embryology and we could confirm that the unborn is alive, the unborn is a unique individual, but we want to ask, is this living, unique individual a human being or something else? Or a potential human or what? Well, again, we have two ways scientifically that we can come to know that the unborn is a human being. The first way is by simply looking at its genetic signature. We could perhaps see 4 embryos of different animals. And early on at the embryonic stage, we wouldn't really be able to tell which is which or what kind of animal or being any one of these things is. But if we were to test its DNA, we could then conclude that perhaps this embryo is actually a fish, and this one's a bird, and this one's a turtle, and then this one is a human being, just by looking at its DNA. Now, perhaps many of you don't have access to go to Target and get a DNA genetic signature kit and figure out, well, is it a human being? So actually, I have a much simpler tool that any one of you could use to figure out what type of being the unborn is. And it's based on what's called the law of biogenesis. This is a principle that Louis Pasteur developed back in the 1800s. And it's basically a fancy phrase for a very basic concept, and it's this: living things reproduce after their own kind. Meaning when 2 dogs mate, they come together and mate, and they produce another what? Dog, that's right. When 2 giraffes come together and mate, they produce another giraffe, that's right. And when my wife and I were pregnant, we wondered whether we were going to have a boy or a girl or not, but we didn't wonder whether we were going to have a human or not. Because we know we're probably going to have another human being. In fact, when we had our second child, and our second child turned out to be human as well, it's not like we were surprised. Hey, look, 2 humans. What are the chances, I mean, it was obvious because we're both humans, so we're going to have a human as well. And so you see, this gives us a very practical test. If you want to know what kind of being the unborn is, all you got to do is ask, what are its parents? And if its parents are humans, then there is no way they are going to produce something that is not human as well. It's not potential human, it is a human being from the moment it is conceived. And so you see then, we have 3 scientific, embryological sorts of evidences that help show that the unborn is alive, it's a unique individual, and number 3, it's a human type of being. And so this is why we can safely conclude that the unborn is a human being just like you and me. Now, I want to show you a video that will allow you to confirm with your eyes what your mind has just learned, and that is the unborn is a human being. And as a Peggy was sharing that a lot of pregnancy resource centers around the country are now utilizing ultrasounds because they realize the power of images and how they impact people. So not just people like you and me who are visually impacted, but for many abortion-minded women who see an image, maybe an ultrasound of their unborn child, will change their minds. And so this video allows you to see what the unborn looks like at just 9 weeks gestation. But this is not an ultrasound. It's not scratchy or grainy. It's actually a camera that is inserted inside the womb and literally inside the sac that the baby is in. So let's take a look at the video, and that way we have an appreciation of what we are talking about at just 9 weeks. So still the embryonic stage. So again, there you have, at just 9 weeks gestation, what clearly is a human being that obviously resembles most of us here. Now, I am not arguing that the unborn is a human being just because it looks like a human being or it looks like somebody like you and I. Because obviously, maybe 8 weeks before this, the unborn kind of looks like a soccer ball. And in fact, many people say, Alan, see, the unborn at just 1 or 2 weeks or 3 weeks gestation doesn't look like you and me, doesn't look like a human being. And to this, I would disagree. I'd say, actually, that's not true at all. The unborn looks exactly the way it's supposed to look at that stage of development. Humans at 2 weeks old are not supposed to have arms and legs and hair and body odor and all the stuff that we have now. But at 2 weeks gestation, when they look the way they do look, that's exactly the way a human being is supposed to look at that stage of development. But again, this just simply is a way of kind of visualizing, capturing, and understanding that inside many women, even at 9 weeks, we have what is clearly a human being. And so this first question, what is the unborn, has already been answered. But here's the second question. What makes human beings valuable? What makes human beings valuable? Now, biblically speaking, this is obviously pretty straightforward. We recognize that the Bible teaches that human beings are valuable because they are made in the image of God. In fact, this is what Genesis 1:27 makes so clear. It says, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. And of course, being made in God's image means that we have what's called intrinsic value. And that's just a fancy word for saying that our value is inherent within us. It's by virtue of being made in God's image, meaning that our value is not a degreed property. It's not something that it's not based on abilities that we gain or lose as we grow, old or anything like that. Having intrinsic value, we either have it or we don't. And of course, being made in God's image means that we do have it. Now, naturally, followers of Jesus Christ, and indeed perhaps Jews as well, who recognize Genesis, would acknowledge that, biblically speaking, yes, this is the reason why we have value. But you realize that people who don't accept the Word of God would reject that. Okay? And so as ambassadors for Jesus Christ, of which we are, we have to be savvy enough to be able to use sources of information that perhaps the culture considers to be reliable. And since they don't consider the Bible to be a reliable source of authority, we have to look to science or to philosophy. And so I've already shown scientifically that the unborn is a human being. Now what I'm going to do is argue that all human beings are valuable without appealing to Scripture. And many years ago, I was debating a feminist. It was at a university down in the San Diego area, and it was a debate over the question, should abortion be legal? And so I made a scientific defense for the full humanity of the unborn from the moment of conception. And I basically argued that abortion should be considered illegal because, of course, we're killing an innocent human being. And in her response, this women's studies professor and feminist said, you know what? I agree with Alan's science. I have no bones to pick with the evidence that he just presented. The unborn clearly is a human being, she said. However, abortion should still be allowed. She said, because the unborn, while it might be a human being, it's not a valuable human being. Now, here's what she was basically arguing. We call this changing the challenge. This is the moral logic of the pro-life view. We would say, look, it's wrong to kill innocent human beings. Abortion kills an innocent human being, therefore abortion is wrong. So the way this works is these are two premises, and if you can prove that these two premises are true, then the conclusion logically follows. So obviously most people agree to this first premise, that it's wrong to kill innocent human beings, but the main difficult one is this one, that abortion kills an innocent human being. Now, I've already shown scientifically that the unborn is a human, and since abortion kills the unborn, it's killing an innocent human being. So this logic works just fine, but here's what many people like my debate opponent said, try to sidestep this issue. They say this, it's not wrong to kill innocent human beings, they say, it's wrong to kill innocent human persons. And abortion kills an innocent human being, but it doesn't kill a person. So therefore, abortion is not wrong. Basically, she's saying, look, the unborn might be a human being, but it's not a person. Now, anytime someone says something like this, and this is kind of basically the gist of what she said, there's a really obvious question that needs to be asked. And that is, what's the difference? What's the difference between a human being and a human person? And notice, they have to have an answer to this question because they've just made the incredible claim that there exists a group of human beings out there that we can kill with impunity simply because they are not persons. Really? Which human beings are they so we can go kill them? You know? It's an amazing claim. And so she proceeded then to cite all kinds of qualities and characteristics that she believed makes a human being into a bona fide person. Talked about brain development and saying, well, look, the unborn can't think for himself or herself. They're not aware of their own existence through time. They're dependent upon the mother, and they're not viable. And all these characteristics and qualities that they believe make a human being into a person. And so I want to teach you a brief tactic that'll help you to respond to a challenge like this and also show there is no morally significant difference between the unborn that you once were and the born human being that you are today. And it's known as the sled test. And the sled test really is this tactic that says, look, we acknowledge that unborn human beings and born human beings differ in significant ways, but none of those four differences is relevant to the question of personhood. Meaning, although the unborn and a born human being differ in these four ways, none of them are relevant. And so you can remember the four ways that the unborn differs from a born person with the acronym SLED: size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. And you'll see that none of these differences disqualifies the unborn from personhood. Let me take each one in order real briefly here. The first one is size. Yes, it's true. The unborn is generally smaller than newborn or a born human being. But why does size matter? Right? I mean, men are generally larger than women. Does that mean men are more valuable or more persons than women? Men don't say anything. Sometimes there's always a man like, yeah, actually, like, sir, you're not helping. No, of course not, right? I mean, my 6-year-old daughter is a lot smaller than me. Does that mean that I'm more of a person than she is? Of course not. So if the unborn differs in the same way than, say, my 6-year-old daughter simply by size, then that can't be a relevant quality to disqualify the unborn. Because if we can disqualify the unborn because they're smaller, we can disqualify my daughter as well for being smaller than me. So size is irrelevant when it comes to personhood or value. What about the L in SLED, level development? Yeah, it's true. The unborn is less developed than a born human being. But why does that matter? Again, my 6-year-old daughter, she isn't even fully developed. She doesn't even have her fully developed reproductive system in order to bear children, and yet a 16-year-old girl does. Does that somehow affect her value or status as a person? Of course not. Well, the unborn is also just less developed than my 6-year-old daughter. And so that can't make the unborn less of a human or less of a person simply because they are less developed. Then there's E, environment. Yes, it's true, the unborn is located in a different environment than a born human being. But as philosopher Francis Beckwith says, where one is has no bearing on who one is. Right? I mean, when you, or if someone was to travel up in space into a spacesuit and be floating around there in space, or they swim underwater with scuba gear, does their change in location affect who they are as a person or their value? No, of course not. And so, if it doesn't affect your value based on where you are, how does a 7-inch journey down the birth canal magically transform a non-valuable human being into a valuable human being or into a person? Nothing has changed except location. And then the D in SLED stands for degree of dependency. Yes, it's true. The unborn is dependent upon the mother for survival. But why would being dependent upon another person somehow alter or affect your value or your status as a person? Right? Many elderly people are dependent upon their grown children for their care and their survival. Conjoined twins who are born stuck together many times share similar organs. They're dependent upon one another for their survival. We don't disqualify them. Or imagine you were at a pool party and you're the last person to leave the pool area going inside, and you see a toddler fall in the deep end of the pool. Their life is entirely dependent upon you for their survival. Could you be like, well, in that case, you are no longer a person? It's ridiculous. Because dependency upon another person doesn't affect your status as a person. In fact, babies of all ages depend upon their mothers for nutrition, whether via blood, breast, or bottle. In fact, even after kids are born, I can show you, when my 2 kids were born, they were still dependent upon their parents for survival, right? Some of you mothers probably have teenagers that are still dependent upon you for their survival. Some of you mothers or some of you women probably have husbands that depend upon you for their survival, right? And the point being is that being dependent upon others for your survival shouldn't disqualify you from being valuable, because lots of people are dependent upon others. And so you see, the SLED test helps us with this, because there's only 4 ways the unborn differs from born human beings, and none of those 4 ways is relevant. None of those ways justifies disqualifying the unborn from personhood. So I want to conclude with a final question, and that is, what is our duty? What is our duty? We've talked about how the unborn is a human being. The unborn is also valuable, just like any other born human being. So what's our duty to these human beings? Well, Jesus tells us that we are to love our neighbors. Is the unborn our neighbor? Well, he or she is if they're a human being, and we've shown that they are. So yes, they are our neighbor. Well, what would it then mean to love our unborn neighbor? Well, love, biblically understood, is not a feeling. It's more than a feeling, as the song goes, right? It's an action. It's something that we do. And Jesus said, if you love me, you'll obey my commands. And then he explained the parable of the Good Samaritan. In Luke 10, the story, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, a man is beaten and robbed, left to die on the side of the road, and a priest walks by and sees the man and walks past him, and then a Levite also comes by and sees the man and walks past him, and then eventually, kind of the bad guy in the story, the Samaritan, sees the man and acts. And Jesus castigates the priest and the Levite not because they didn't feel pity or compassion, but because they did nothing to show compassion. They didn't act at all. And yet the Samaritan, on the other hand, saw the man, had pity and compassion, and then acted to care for the person. And Jesus says, go and do the same. And so we can't simply be pro-life in our attitude and just say we're pro-life. We have to be pro-life in behavior. We actually have to do something to stop the killing. And that means we will have a chance to be really champions for life. And champions go beyond what merely feels good. Champions typically will go above and beyond and do what most of the rest of us won't do. An example of a champion I think of is Oskar Schindler. Many of you probably saw the movie Schindler's List by Steven Spielberg many years ago. Great movie. Story of this man, Oskar Schindler, who buys these Jews off the death camp list in Nazi Germany, and by employing them in his own factory, he ends up saving the lives of these Jews. And towards the end of the movie, there's a very moving scene where Oskar Schindler is standing with around maybe 1,100 Jews who are standing there that he's saved, and they're thanking him for what he did, the risks he took. And he now has to get in a car and drive away because now he's on the run as well, and he's in trouble. And they're thanking him, and it's just an emotional time. And as he starts to turn to walk towards his car, he looks at his car, and Oskar says, "That's my car." And the Jews are like, yes, Oskar Schindler, of course it's your car. He goes, "I could have sold that car. I could have sold that car and bought 10 more Jews off the death camp list. I could have saved 10 more people, and I didn't." And they're like, "Oskar, it's okay. It's no big deal. You did all that you can." And then Oskar looks down, and he sees on his jacket a pin, and he takes the pin off. He's like, "This pin, it's gold. I could have sold this pin and saved one more Jew. No, I could have saved 2. But I didn't. I didn't do enough." And he falls down weeping, saying, "I could have done more, and I didn't do enough. I could have done more, but I didn't do enough." Friends, are we taking our Holocaust as seriously as Oskar Schindler took his? Are we loving our unborn neighbors the way Jesus commanded us to? Because remember, you all in here were once an unborn human being. And killing you in the womb would not have killed a potential you or someone like you. It would have killed you. So I encourage you to join me in using these basic tools of persuasion to change minds on abortion, to make abortion unthinkable in your sphere of influence, because it could be the difference between life and death for a fellow unborn human being. Now, before I step down here, I want to invite the band to come up and get ready to close us out, but I want to encourage you to stay connected with us at Stand to Reason, and I want all of you to pull out this card that says the sled test on it. All of you pull this out and wave it at me. We're going to stand here. We're going to wait here even until the game starts, okay? So all of you pull it out and show me that you have this card. This is essential. Look, it's perforated. I want you to fold it in half where it's perforated and tear it apart. And I want you to take notice of what's called here the sled test. Now, you'll probably recognize this because we talked about the sled test just a minute ago. And the sled test is a very handy tactic that helps us to distinguish between what qualifies as a relevant human being or not. And obviously, we've shown that the 4 ways that people disqualify the unborn, size, level of development, environment, degree of dependency, none of those 4 ways is relevant. And this is something for you to keep. Keep in your back pocket, your purse, your wallet, your backpack, your man bag. I don't know what people carry these days, right? It's for you to keep as a reminder, okay? The white card is for me, and if you want to stay connected to us at Stand to Reason, we want to send you free training on things like this. We don't just speak about abortion, although this is one of the main topics that I cover, but we talk about all sorts of things. And every 2 months, as Pastor Craig was saying, we send out a training article on some timely topic. So we talk about evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. We talk about the reasons why we think the Bible is reliable and trustworthy. We talk about cloning, abortion, Islam. A few articles ago, I wrote an article about the causes of same-sex attractions. So we cover lots of things that are very, very relevant for Christians today because we live in a culture that obviously is hostile to the Christian worldview. And so if you want to get that, it's free. All you got to do is tell us where you live. If you want a digital version in PDF, also include your email address and indicate, I want the digital version emailed to me instead of one sent by snail mail. And then before you leave, I'm going to be standing outside in the foyer. Give me this card before you go, and I'll get you signed up for this free training. Okay? So I'll close in prayer, and then we'll have the worship team close us up here. Father, we thank you for churches like Cornerstone Community Church that are willing to tackle a tough and controversial topic like abortion from the pulpit, Lord. And we recognize that many times we just haven't done enough to stop the killing of unborn human beings. Lord, we recognize that all of us are made in your image, even the unborn, and we are called to do what we can to save their lives. Lord, you've called us to be ambassadors for Christ and commanded us to be involved in the process of reconciliation. And when we go out and talk about these things, Lord, we want to make sure that we're not speaking just with knowledge and great wisdom and tactics, but having a character that brings honor to your Son's name, Jesus. Lord, so help us to do that. Thank you for your Holy Spirit that lives in us. And we pray that our lives will be lived in such a way that is honoring to your Son. Amen. Again, remember, be sure to give me this card before you go if you want to stand up for a free training. Thank you very much.